everybody, and welcome to another Mind of Marlin Treetop Talks. The ducks are fed, the chickens are fed, and now it's time to feed your head. With all of the hullabaloo, hand waving, hand wringing, hand shaking, wrist slapping, bitch slapping, name calling, eye rolling, gag inducing, gut wrenching, throat choking, horror filled process we call a presidential campaign, it is amazing that anybody has any energy whatsoever left to think. Which reminds me that about 40% of American population probably isn't. If they were, Donald Trump would have been canceled and taken off the air like his television show was years ago. But we are still watching reruns of Star Trek more than 30 years later, and like them, Donald is going where no man has gone before. If he hadn't been made a reality TV star, although who can really claim that this guy is for real, nobody would have known who he is any more than they know who the 55th wealthiest person in America is, which, by the way, is Carolyn Rose Hunt. But he is, and that is why so many people think he is qualified for the job. In The Apprentice, the show that made him a star, he sat around a big table and told contestants they were fired or hired, and that made him an expert on foreign affairs, affairs of state, public policy, governance, and mostly the ability to forge fractious groups into a cohesive whole who could then create consensus. If you are a dictator, which is essentially what a corporate chief of a private company is, you don't need to create consensus. People who don't agree with you, they just get fired. That's how it's handled. Do you think that Donald wished there was a real firing squad? But if nobody wants to work with you, it leaves you a team of one, which, by the way, Trump says a lot. I am the one. I am the only one. I am number one. Although many people think he acts like number two. What if we never heard Trump? What we never heard Trump say on his show was, I lost $900 million in 10 years. Or, I bankrupted 3 casinos, even though the odds were in my favor. I had thousands of lawsuits filed against me for not paying my bills, and on and on and on. Like TV, it was whitewashed, or more aptly put, white privilege washed. People who tuned in and watched The Apprentice have already broadcast as loud as the broadcast companies who aired that claptrap of a show, the kind of people they are by the type of content they consume. Yes, we are what we consume. If we read literature rather than the television guide, our worldview will be quite different. If we listen to classical music and jazz, our minds will be working in different ways than if we only listen to hip hop and electronica. To play the former requires learning that you learn how to read music. The latter doesn't require literacy at all, which isn't to say that doesn't make these people who make music aren't literate. It's just that they're not schooled in music. If you can't read music, you can't play the music of the ages like Mozart or Beethoven. Something that is simple, we quickly understand and then move on from. Things that have depth, nuance, require discernment to hold our attention. That is why we can look at a great piece of art over and over again and never get tired of it. If people were really thinking rather than operating from a knee-jerk reaction that is infused with the hatred of the government and the inability to solve their personal problems, then Donald would not have been given a second thought. But you would have to have a first thought before there's even hope of a second one. Donald says, like his supporters, that the government is ineffective. Why is that? Well, because the Republicans think that being an obstructionist solves problems. They'll shoot at a flag that somebody else is trying to raise rather than crafting and raising one of their own. They will dismantle Obamacare even though they have nothing of their own to take its place. Having done both, I know it is far easier to demolish a house than build one. It takes nothing but brute force to take a house down. It takes thinking, planning, formulating, careful measurement to build a house. Some people will find 100 reasons why something is wrong without ever offering something they think is right. If people look at lobbyists or special interests driving the government, look no further than big oil driving Republicans to deny climate change. Who else would have an interest in denying it than big oil? Or the scientists who are paying, who are on the payroll of big oil, to put out a countering argument? How many once-in-a-century events need to happen in one decade before somebody says climate change is real, Donald Trump is wrong, and is in a Chinese hoax, nor more than COVID-19 virus is a Democratic hoax? Donald has just the kind of people supporting him that he needs. Like him. They don't think about the issues, they just rail against it, and they rail against others. Like him, they don't seek solutions, just shout that the other solutions are taking away their freedoms. Think of the people who've now been displaced in America because of hurricanes and fires. How much freedom do they have now? In World War II, people were on rations. The ration books contain removable stamps, good for certain rationed items like sugar, meat, cooking oil, canned goods. A person could not buy a rationed item without also giving the grocer the right ration stamp. And it was done to support the effort to defeat fascism on another continent thousands of miles away. People didn't whine and complain about their freedoms being taken away. If they did, people's eyebrows would raise and consider it unpatriotic. Today, being asked to wear a mask for the good of your neighborhood, town, county, state, and nation is be considered an infringement of rights. But there is something greater than your rights as defined by the Constitution. It's called human compassion, human decency, human kindness. These things shouldn't need a piece of paper to define them. They should be taught by parents. And if your parents weren't around, then Mr. Rogers became dad. And if your older siblings and mom wasn't around, then Sesame Street. These are the ethics of children. And it seems as many people in America do not even have the capacity to think at even a child's level. Which brings me back to Donald Trump. Thinking is for losers and suckers. Yes, he said that about veterans. But don't you think those vets thought about what they were doing? And they weren't just sucked into some scheme the way that Trump University and Build the Wall sucked up people? And if Trump wins again, I think we will all be losers because he is playing us for suckers. When you watch the debates, all you need to do is ask, who's the adult in the room? Put aside your political affiliations, your pride, your anger, your sense of injustice, and ask, which one of those two men would you want to raise your children? Because the president is, for at least a 4-year term, our father, who art in the White House, the people's house. In the words of Graham Nash, our house is a very, very, very fine house. Be kind to one another. Children know how to do it. Take a cue from them. Aloha, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again. Wash your hands, wear your mask, and do it for the other person. They're counting on all of us to make this happen. We are a great nation when we all get on the same end of the rope and pull. Aloha.